experience also, and the volunteers and how they've thought, how they've behaved, and how over the last 20 years hizmet and AIS has grown and prospered in thought and in connections, building these
Right,
local connections.
right.
What are the, I suppose, the differences today to the early interviews that you did for the book?
Just that there are more people more involved. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, the aftermath of the July 2016 fake coup, and let me just specify that so I can get it out of the way, although we can come back to it in more detail if you wish. I was convinced in July of 2016, and subsequently it became much clearer to me, that Mr. Erdogan was behind the fake coup for any number of reasons, the most obvious of which is how ineffectually it was done relative to other coups that the Turks have accomplished decade by decade in the previous two generations. You do it in the middle of the night, not during rush hour. You round up whom you need to round up immediately. You don't leave them out there. And of course, it was an interesting, extraordinary coincidence that Mr. Erdogan, Johnny on the spot with his cell phone, already had this enormous list of the perpetrators practically before it happened, which is odd. So my mind went immediately to the burning of the Reichstag in February of 1933, when the Nazi Party managed to blame it on the communists, and that was one of the important features in Mr. Hitler's solidifying his power. So this worked similarly for Erdogan. So in the immediate aftermath of that, people all over the hizmet world were really concerned about the future. So that's 2016. Now we're now almost 7 years later. And so I would say the biggest difference is that sense of discomfort and concern as to what the future is has diminished, because I think most people engaged and involved with hizmet have realized that not only is the movement much stronger than they feared it might be or might not be, but they have perhaps come to realize that Mr. Erdogan's attempts to destroy it have all backfired. And I can speak from the United States, because that's where I live. People who never had heard of hizmet, thanks to Mr. Erdogan, have heard about it. They've heard about Gülen, they hadn't known about Gülen. So in fact, it's backfired because it's offered a platform for the activities in which hizmet has always been engaged to expand those activities. And in out-of-the-way places, you wouldn't even expect to find a lot of Turks in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Well, I was there during Ramadan a couple of weeks ago for 2 iftar interfaith dinners, and at each of them there was about 100 people. Not huge, but large enough. This is still just post-COVID. And most of the people at those dinners and in those audiences probably would not have even been aware of hizmet if Erdogan's efforts had not kind of thrust the spotlight on hizmet.